Perfect. Okay, yeah, like you said, my name is Ashton. I'm the new campus recruiter at Forvis. Been at Forvis for about a year now, but just transitioned over to campus recruiter about 3 weeks ago. Do any of you know what BKD? Anyone heard of BKD here in Springfield? Yeah, okay, a couple. Great. So, go this way. Here we go. So, BKD has been around in the Springfield area for this year will be 100 years. And then last summer, we recently merged with another CPA and accounting firm called DHG. We are both within the top 20 of accounting firms, and then our people kind of came together and decided it would be a good idea if the two companies, because they were so similar, merged together to create Forvis. And so now, as of June of last summer, we are called Forvis. And recently, when the two companies merged, it was kind of like, okay, do we go BKD, do we go DHG, what are we going to call ourselves? But with two equal firms like that, they decided to come up with a new name, which is Forvis, which is a combination of the words forward and vision, and that's how you get Forvis. And so then they kind of recreated our mission and purpose and values, so we are united. Instead of just BKD and DHG, we are now one as Forvis. So the team came up with our purpose statement, that is to help those we serve unlock their full potential. And then our mission to build remarkable careers and provide an unmatched client experience through an uncommon commitment to excellence. And that really stands out. You have the first part that's building remarkable careers, which is for our internal people, but also the other part of that to provide an unmatched client experience to our clients is also the external part of our mission. And then our vision, our forward vision, is to be known for creating engaging opportunities, delivering innovative solutions, and building unrivaled relationships. And we also have the Forvis way called Be Bold. And a big part of that is be your best self, is something that we talk about in the office a lot. And our team really encourages employees to be their best selves, but also the clients that our accountants work with. They also encourage the clients to be their best selves as well in how they serve them. So a couple facts about Forvis. When we combined with the two accounting firms to form Forvis, that moved us to the 8th largest accounting firm in the United States and over 5,500 team members across the country. And we do have, we're in the top 10 of accounting firms, but in our local offices, it does still very feel like the small firm atmosphere, which is really, really great. And we are in 28 states in the UK and Cayman Islands, which is kind of fun to talk about. And as the company grows, you can see all the different dots on the map. Those are our office locations. So Forvis is continue to grow over the years. So if you want to consider Forvis potentially in your career, we have locations pretty much all over the country that we can help get you plugged in with. And to run a large accounting firm like this, it does kind of take a village to run something quite this large. So we have your normal accounting degree hires, which are audit and tax, and that's mainly what we hire for. And those are the accounting majors that want to pursue CPA and have the 150 credit hours to sit for that. But we also offer opportunities for accounting and finance students if those students don't necessarily want to pursue the CPA, with consulting, outsourced accounting services, and then private client as well. And then outside of the accounting realm itself, we also have marketing, IT, and innovation administrative opportunities. And here in Springfield, we have what used to be the national office, national headquarters for Forvis. And so that's why we get to have a lot of those great opportunities with marketing, IT, and innovation as well, and other administrative roles. So to kind of wrap up the Forvis commercial for you, we do have a priority application deadline coming up next week of February 15th. So if you're interested in interviewing or applying for any intern or associate positions for 2024 or 2025, that's the priority deadline to apply online. If you want your first choice in location preferences or something like that. You can definitely apply after February 15th if you're interested. But first priority goes to those that applied by February 15th. And then we'll be holding virtual interviews as well, kind of the weeks following that. So if you're interested, there's a code. Feel free to scan it. It does take you to just early careers and intern opportunities. And then just because it's a massive list, if you filter by location, it'll help you kind of sort it out. So that kind of wraps up things about Forvis. Any questions about Forvis? We'll kind of stop and take a break. Anyways, questions before we move on? Okay, great. We'll also have time for questions at the end. So now we're going to kind of talk about workplace etiquette and what that looks like in the corporate world itself. So workplace etiquette, what is that? It's proper behavior in the workplace for making the environment where people work a polite, respectful, and pleasant place to be. Some examples of that, which we'll dive into, would be, just kind of like class. You arrive on time, you smile and say hello to the professor or the people sitting next to you, but also make conversation. Be mindful of others. Your phone's not going off in class, so you're respectful, and then silence your phone. So similar to class, and etiquette for that is also applicable in the workplace. Why is workplace etiquette important? To win in the marketplace, you must first win in the workplace. And so kind of with the Forvin mission of be your best self, when you win in the workplace and you are your best self, then it kind of transpires into the rest of your life as well. Following simple etiquette guidelines can make the workplace more pleasant, and it is important to professional success. And there are 4 kind of key areas that Forvis talks about in regards to workplace etiquette. So we're going to go into some do's and don'ts just generally across the board. Respecting others, arrive on time, dress appropriately. And this one kind of differs depending on the day you're having in the office. So when our accountants are going to meet with clients, if the client is usually dressed up really nice, wearing a suit, works in like the top level office, then we want our accountants or our advisors to be presentable in that way as well. But inside Forvis, if you're just meeting with coworkers or you're going to be at your desk working, maybe talking to your coach or something like that, then we kind of dress down just a little bit, and you can wear jeans. But also you want to be kind of that standard that your clients are at, because you want to be respected by them as well. Be willing to help others. This is something that Forvis and our employees are really good at, are helping their fellow coworkers with any problems, because when you're working on a project, there's going to be something that comes up, especially when you're new or it's your first time on the job. There's going to be something that comes up that you don't necessarily know how to do, and that's okay. That's what onboarding and training and learning, that's what all of that is about. But then as you get things kind of figured out and you learn more, there's going to be more people coming up behind you, and that can offer great opportunities for kind of mentorship as well. So as you're thinking about that one. And also asking questions. It's not a bad thing to ask questions. It's also better to ask a question about something if you're not sure, than get down the road and find out you did it wrong and you second-guessed it the whole time. So asking questions is also really great. Don'ts. Gossip about coworkers, pretty self-explanatory. Bringing your emotions into the office. Now, this one can kind of be a little different. If you're friends outside of the workplace, you want to maintain a level of professionalism inside the workplace as well. So those conversations can kind of be kept either for your lunch break when you're out to lunch or something like that, or times when you're not working in the office. Talking back to your boss, definitely don't do that, and overstepping boundaries. Okay, email and texting etiquette. This one can kind of vary on perspective, kind of based on the different people you work with or demographics of people. You'll kind of get different responses in the corporate world based on who you're communicating with. So it's really helpful to kind of understand the person and who you're communicating with, but it's always good to be concise. You want to be straight to the point, because people are busy and they're working, so you want to get to the point of whatever your problem is so they can help you most effectively. You also want to know your audience. So who are you communicating to? Are you communicating to your team member that you work with every single day? Are you communicating with your boss or a partner that you don't necessarily talk to all the time, but that you really respect? Those are kind of things to think about whenever you're emailing or texting. Also be careful of attachments. I've definitely done this before when I said, oh yeah, see the presentation attached, and then you didn't attach it, and then they respond, oh, where's the presentation you're talking about? Bummer. But that's okay, you can just resend it. So always be careful whenever you say that you included attachments, that it's the right one. Also, something that your email, depending on which one you use, has, if you use the word attachment in your email and you don't attach something, it will pop up with a notification that says, did you mean to attach something? So technology is helpful for that. Don'ts. Use all caps. You don't want to seem like you're yelling at your coworkers. That's not very respectful. Reply all when necessary. Sometimes there's email chains where everyone just keeps hitting reply all, but that is not very concise. And sometimes not super helpful if you don't necessarily need to be in the know of something or its information doesn't pertain to you. It can really like bog down your email whenever you're trying to get work done. So kind of be cautious of that as well. And then emojis and icons. If you're just like sending a message to someone you work with and you send a smiley face, that's generally okay. But if it's like your boss or a director or a partner, that's not necessarily something that you want to use. So know your audience is kind of how I'll summarize that one as well. And then cubicle etiquette or desk etiquette, whatever you happen, or wherever you happen to work at. Respect privacy. Most desks or cubes don't have a door. So if someone is really focused working with something and they have headphones in, maybe come back at a different time or send them an email or a message to kind of help with that. Also keep the noise level to a minimum. If desks are close together and people are talking, it can tend to get pretty loud pretty quickly. But also you want to be respectful of those people around you. So if they're working or on the phone with a client and there's things going on in the background, we just want to be respectful of them and also the clients. And then make sure that the clients are having the best experience as well. And then be neat and tidy. There's constantly people walking around and walking back and forth. In an area in Forvis, we have, it's called the bullpen, which is where a lot of our new hires work. And a lot of those desks, if they're on the audit team, they might be out for 2 weeks. So whenever they're back in the office, they have a desk that they can reserve and sit at, but it's not necessarily the desk that they sit at every single time when they're in and out of the office all the time. So those team members in the bullpen are really great about keeping their spaces orderly. They all have lockers, so if you have something like that where you want to put your coats or jackets or random things like that, those are good places to store those things. But we also want to be neat and tidy in case a client does walk through. We want to present ourselves very well. Don't use speakerphone, especially when you're taking personal calls. If that's something that you can take to the break room or take outside for a few minutes, that's a great place to do that. Discuss personal issues. Also a great time for your break or your lunch if you're out with a friend. Those are good times for that, but not necessarily while people are getting their work done. And also linger if they are busy. Sometimes it can be hard for people to specifically say that they need to get their work done whenever you're standing around having a conversation with them. So that's just another way that we can respect those working around us, is to do that. And then next, something that can be really relevant nowadays that might not necessarily have been relevant, say 3 or 4 years ago, is virtual office etiquette. So like when you're in a meeting, a virtual meeting, Skype, Zoom, whatever meeting, when you have a call or things like that, virtual office etiquette. That's much more relevant now that people work from home and things like that. Speak up when asked. So if someone point blank asks you to speak up, sometimes there's issues with microphones, so that could be a cause of that. But always make sure you speak loud enough that your microphone can pick you up. If you have a headset or you're just talking through your computer, mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Like pets and things, those sounds can get picked up, and then it'll highlight your little bubble. And we just want to be respectful of the meeting, so that way you can get the things done that you need to get done and not be distracted. Also use attentive body language. So that would be just making sure your eyes are on the screen or taking notes or whatever, but not like sitting back in your seat scrolling on your phone, because it's pretty obvious in meetings when that happens. So you definitely want to pay attention to the speaker and whatever's going on to help you with whatever project you're working on. And using a professional background. There's lots of options for that specifically. So those are good things to have as well. And don't stay silent in a meeting where collaboration is really helpful in getting the project moving along. If you have something that you think is valuable to the team, definitely share those. that's what the team is for, is to build each other up. So if you have a good idea that you think might be beneficial, those are good times to add those. Also, send messages during meetings. That's pretty obvious too when people are messaging back and forth in meetings. You kind of laugh because your work bestie sends you a joke and then it makes you smile. Those are kind of distracting, so definitely don't do that, and then don't multitask. Everyone has work that they need to get done, but also if there's a meeting, chances are that's really important for you to be there and pay attention. And so set aside time specifically to get whatever those tasks are completed so you can pay attention to the meeting as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk about tips for your interview. At some point, if you guys haven't already, you're going to be going for interviews with some type of employer or admission into grad school or something like that. It's really important to be early and on time. You don't want the people that are interviewing you to be waiting, because then that kind of gives them a not great perspective on you, because whenever people hire employees, they want them to be on time. They want them to get to their clients on time. They want to set that good example for the company as well. So that's why that one is super, super important. But also it allows time for you to have the best experience with those that are interviewing you. So if you're late, then that's a shorter amount of time for them to get to know you and you to get to know the company as well. And that time is really valuable, especially for those interviewers. They've taken their time out of their day to talk with you as well. So even if that's meeting with like your professors or someone from a company that you want to connect with to talk about opportunities like that as well, that's also a good tip for that. No chewing gum. That can be really distracting. I think it's pretty self-explanatory on that one. Keep eye contact with your interviewer. Not looking around. Whenever you have eye contact with someone that says, like, I'm focused, I'm paying attention to the word you're saying, and I'm really taking it in. And so eye contact is really, really important, especially if you're in an interview where there's more than one person. You need to look at all of them, not just one of them, because it's a conversation with everyone that's there. Research the company and ask questions. This one is really, really important. As a recruiter, you can definitely tell the people that research the company and know things versus those that don't necessarily know anything about your company. And so it's really good to just kind of have a foundation of whatever that company is that you're going to interview with, because then you can ask them questions about their mission, values, or things like that. And that kind of will set you apart in the interview process, is if you ask questions about that as well. And it's also helpful even before you start at a company to know more about them anyway. So you're just kind of getting a little bit more ahead in that process. Always follow up with a thank you email. Those are just really, really nice things to receive. And there's nothing that will hurt you by sending a thank you email. So that's just a nice addition to add if you kind of want to up your perspective with the hiring team or things like that. Virtual interview, be aware of your surroundings. This one is increasingly more important with virtual interviews. Like, you don't want people walking in and out if you're like sitting in the library for an interview or in a public space where people are just walking around. That's really distracting to the interviewers, but also distracting to yourselves as well when people are walking by or talking around you. You want to be focused on the interview and what the interviewers are asking you. So just be careful of that. Use virtual backgrounds. Those are helpful to block out whatever is behind you. If you want like a white wall behind you and you just have your couch to sit on, use a virtual background and they'll never know that you're sitting on your couch. But also be aware of sounds and noises, kind of like I mentioned earlier. You want to be in like a closed space where people aren't going to disrupt you, because you want to give your attention to the interviewers and the people that are interviewing you. Okay. And then preparing for spring recruitment and resume tips. These are really helpful. You want to make sure that your resume is updated. It's always helpful at any point in your life to keep your resume updated. So if you are applying for a job and someone asks you, oh yeah, can you send me your resume? You don't have to sit for a couple hours and think through all the things that you've done to be able to add it to your resume to send it to an employer or things like that. So keeping your resume updated is super, super helpful. Keep it to 1 page. That's all that you really need, is 1 page in bullet points. And keep it concise too. You don't need to include all 25 pages of things that you did at your job. Just make sure it's concise and to the point, and that will work. List out your expected graduation date. Especially when you're still in school, it's really helpful for people to have an idea of when you're going to graduate, so they can figure out when it would be best to give you an offer or when your start date might need to be or things like that. That's just helpful in the conversation if they already know that going in. So if you list out your graduation date and if you're going to get your master's, if you're going for an extra year or extra education like that too, it's helpful to list out your graduation date for that as well. And listing your overall and major GPA is not required. If it's really high and that's something you're really proud of, definitely list it. But it's not something that's really required. Also, it's really great to work with your career service teams and professors. They have experience in this as well. Even going over resumes, if you take a draft to them, they'll be able to give you tips and advice on that. There's also a resume cafe happening on February 14th, so that would be a great time for you to take your resume. If you have a first draft and you just want tips on that, especially with recruitment coming up, that'd be a great opportunity like that. Also take every opportunity to meet with employers. So at career fairs, student groups, and recruiting events, those are great times to make connections with recruiters and other team members of other companies to kind of get that conversation started. So they can get to know you and you can get to know them to figure out what might be a good fit for you in your career and going forward. But also, if you aren't really sure where you want to be post-graduation or you're not really sure what you want to do, those are good times to ask questions to those people as well. When they're out at events and things, and just get those questions down. Research companies ask good questions. Those are things that can help you in finding what career might be best for you. So I'll kind of wrap up with this slide again and kind of leave it here. If you're interested in applying at Forvis, like I talked about earlier, you can definitely scan the code and apply online for 2024 and 2025 intern and associate opportunities. But that kind of wraps up what I have to talk about. Does anyone have any questions about Forvis or office etiquette career opportunities? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for summer 24 and summer 25. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are already posted. So if you're interested, I would encourage you to definitely apply. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On the etiquette side of things, if someone's around me, like an empty safety and is that a problem for you and what you're doing? How are some ways that you would interact with them if you need that kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. Things that I've done before is just put headphones in. That kind of helps me focus. But if that's not necessarily an option, it's something that keeps happening, you can definitely be polite and say, hey, I have a lot to do today, and would you mind taking this conversation somewhere else so I can focus? That would be really helpful. There's ways that you can be respectful in doing that, so just being the most respectful that you can is always a good option. Any other questions? Yeah.
So with the summer internship, it's still kind of busy, even though after the season.
Yeah, so like accounting season, like the tax season. Yeah, so tax season can be pretty busy, which we also have intern opportunities for that if that's something you're looking for. But our interns definitely stay busy, so we don't hire interns and not have any work for them to do because that doesn't give you a great experience, but also it's not great for us if we don't have work for you to do. So definitely interns stay busy. But also there's a lot of learning and training that goes on as well. So there's a training process, so when you come in as an intern or associate, we don't expect you to know everything about audit, tax, consulting, whatever. So there's a lot of training that goes into that as well. So busy with that. And then you also, as an intern and associate, and even you get a coach. I have a coach. And so you meet with them too, and there's a lot of mentor opportunities that happen through that as well. Good question. Yes? Yeah, good question. So generally we like for you to have a couple of accounting classes under your belt. So now would be a good time for you guys to apply for an intern position. It's helpful to know like a little bit of the accounting language, which at this point you've already kind of learned a little bit of it. So it's never too early to start a conversation or apply. If it's something that works out for you and for us, then we can give you positions for further on down the road. So yeah, definitely a good time to start the conversation. Yes.
When you're wanting to just start networking, because if you're, some people are already in the places in life that they're kind of happy with and they just want to network. Is there any like key questions or information that you can think of off the top of your head for people that like get while they're networking, aside from like their name and like phone number?
It's helpful to ask them about like what their day-to-day is, and if they start talking about what they do, follow-up questions with that, and that'll help you learn more about what they do and also get to know them more. So just being attentive in those conversations, like, what do you do? Simple conversation, question, but if you listen to what they say and you can go off and kind of ask follow-up questions to that, that'll help build a connection as well. But as you talk to people, you can kind of figure out what they're passionate about. They'll kind of talk about that. People usually talk about what they're passionate about within the first couple minutes of talking to them. So if you find out what that is, that's really helpful to make a connection with them, and also ask them like about their company or different questions like that. Does that help? Yeah.
How long have you been at Forvis, and what was your journey like through the company?
Oh, I love this question. I have been at Forvis for a year, so I started before it was Forvis, so while BKD. I started in the talent operations side of things, so kind of on the back side of recruiting. So I spent kind of like 8 or 9 months learning all the systems that we use and what campus recruiters do, and got to watch the company go from BKD to Forvis and how two giant companies coming together. There's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of big decisions that had to be made. And the people making those big decisions were really great with giving us information as they could, and also making those decisions. So that was really great to see as kind of a new employee with how these two companies were going to mesh together and work out together. And then when this campus recruiter position opened, I had a lot of people that I worked with that encouraged me to apply. So that was super helpful as well. And then I also have a great mentor that's taught me a lot of things so far. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is kind of like your education background?
Yeah, I went to Truman State University in northern Missouri and got my degree in business, finance, and management. Any other questions? No? That is true.
If Ashton can walk down the hallway and identify you and go, oh, that's Abby, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. AshtonSneller@gmail.com. I also have business cards, so if you just want to come up and grab one after, you guys can do that too. Any like interview questions about interviews? What to do in an interview?
So it's more leaning more into like Zoom interviews, virtual interviews, than they are the in-person interviews, or you guys kind of swinging back to in-person interviews?
We do both. So for our priority deadline, February 15th, this is kind of like Forvis-wide what we're doing, because we're going to get an influx of applications all at one time. Our interviewers are going to have like a couple days where they just sit down and interview everyone that's applied for their location in those couple days. But as the year kind of goes on and we don't have a massive applicant pool, our interviewers really like to have in-person interviews to make those in-person connections as well. So Forvis does both. Someone had a question, raise their hand. Yes.
What was your interview process like?
The first time or the second time? Both times?
Is mostly, but yeah.
So when I interviewed as BKD, the head of our talent operations, because I worked on the talent side, the head of talent wanted to be the one interviewing the ones that were going to be in the talent pool or talent operations. So I interviewed with her. And then after that, it was a virtual interview because she was in Kansas City. So that was a virtual interview. And then after that, I interviewed with the team that I'd be working with, like my coach and boss. And those were both really great. And then got the job. And then after that, when I applied for the campus recruiter, I already had relationships with the campus managers. So just kind of conversations with them and conversations with my boss. And then I had to interview with the team in the Springfield office. That one was a really good experience to have everyone kind of back to back, the heads of the two different departments and also the managing partner to kind of get their perspectives on recruitment and what that looked like for them. And those were maybe 2 hours. So that one was kind of long, but very thorough, but it was a definitely good experience. Yes.
What would be your advice if, like, you applied to multiple different internships, like choosing which one to go to, or like say in both the same location?
Yeah. So generally recruiters are going to want to put you with the team and your skills that are going to be the best fit. So generally the people that are doing the interviewing, like that's going to be like the tax partners or audit partners or people that work in that field. So they're going to know based on kind of what your skills are and what they need and what they're looking for. They kind of help guide that conversation on this person might be the best fit here or this person might be the best fit here. But also something that Forbes is great at is encouraging you in other opportunities. So there's different areas that I think it's our consulting area where you'll get to, or our interns get to work with different teams. So you get to experience different, like the healthcare team and a couple others. And then later on down the road, they specifically put them with the team that they're going to work with long term. So kind of like a trial of different teams happens as well. Yeah.
What time of year do you finish hiring for
Our summers tend to fill up pretty fast. So like right now we're hiring for 24 and 25 summers. So it just kind of depends. Fall is a really big time to fill summer positions for the next year and the year after that. So definitely apply in the fall or even now if you're interested in summer 24 or 5. At this point in time, Forbes doesn't offer sponsorships.
During the interview process, most people usually focus on the beginning and the end because that's kind of like the crucial, like, first impression and then like the last, reaction and all over. Do you have any tips for like in the middle for like if there's any pauses or any questions that you as being interviewed that you should be asking the company to figure out if it's a good fit for you as well?
If you have to take a second to answer a question, that's not a bad thing. If you're sitting there for like a minute and haven't answered the question at that point, then you can kind of start to feel a little bit awkward in that situation. But if you take like a breath or 5 to 10 seconds to think about your answer, that's definitely okay. But good questions to ask questions about the position, whatever the position is, what the day-to-day is, what different projects you might be working on, what the training process is like. Those are all good questions to ask. Questions about the company. Just a few off the top of my head. Training process for an intern. I don't know exactly for our interns. For our associates, our new hires, that training is a couple days, and we send our associates like this past fall or spring, we sent them to St. Louis for training, and that was a couple days for our associates. I don't think we send our interns to a specific location for training, but our associates we do. Long answer, that didn't really answer your question, but there's an answer. Yeah. It kind of depends on which team you're working with. So our audit interns, since they're not full-time, I don't think they go out and visit clients. But our full-time audit associates would go visit clients. Tax, working on different projects with different teams. It's a lot of working in teams and also getting like feedback on whatever project you did and working with those clients as well. Yeah.
So how, like, I know for people that are trying to get their first internship in accounting, at least they want to try to get into the learning interns within like switch between audit and tech. Yeah, choose one like in the interview process.
So kind of like I mentioned earlier, our team is really good at helping in the conversation figure out like tax or audit or consulting. But also like if one team thinks it might not be a good fit, they'll also recommend candidates for other teams. That also happens. But once you like if someone accepts an offer for like a tax internship, most likely they're going to be a tax intern for that entire period of time. So like entire summer, entire spring. But also those conversations could happen between interns and mentors if things like you think, oh, maybe I want to do audit. Like those are good conversations to have with coaches because they're really helpful at talking through those things because they have experience in whatever area and they can also help with conversations with other teams that you're interested in as well.
I know you went through the do's and don'ts, but is there any like specific pet peeves that you've heard about from like the coaches or team leads or anything?
There isn't anything specific, I don't think, about pet peeves.
One thing I would say, and it's not just for the specific, when you're interviewing for an internship, you're probably not going to be asking about your salary. Here's the thing, they're just going to give you a salary. There's not really much room for negotiation. A lot of people in your shoes are really excited because now you're not making $10 an hour hamburgers anymore, so you want to know, is there room? Just, you're going to get paid well for these internships. And that would be, like Ashton said, I would be more concerned about what does the position entail? What's the workload look like? They're going to be more interested in answering those questions rather than how much money you might get. That would be almost like a pet peeve, just based on some people that I've talked to. Like, they want to know, they come in and they say, I feel like I should make $100,000 as a first-year associate in audit, and it's like, yeah, no, not.
Good answer. Yes. Generally, we have all of our interns start on the same day. That helps with kind of getting to know your team and building community and those kinds of relationships. So generally that starts in June, and it runs through, I think, most of July as well for summer internships. Yes.
So before this, I know like when you have a lot of your interns in school, is there any point in time where it's a graduate program and they're tax interns that they have to take like a gap semester to do the tax internship?
That is a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. But something we do offer our student associate positions, which are kind of full-time interns, so to speak. They work about 20 hours a week through the year. So that's something that if people are interested in like staying in Springfield long-term, that's something that our team likes to offer opportunities to kind of help with school, but also getting more experience as well. Yes. No, you're good.
What is your like
It can depend. Forvis, generally, if you're hired as an intern, that position we want to be where you might end up long term. So if like you're here in school and you think you want to go back to St. Louis after you graduate and that's where you're from, then we're going to connect you with the St. Louis campus recruiter to kind of help that road as well. So like same with our Kansas City office. If you're from Kansas City, we want to connect you with that campus recruiter that's going to know that office better. Any other questions?
There's no other questions?
Great.
Thank you for coming in today.
Of course.